everybody, and this is Hall Monitor on WPPM 106.5. And we have with us today City Councilman Kenyatta Johnson from the 2nd District. The 2nd District includes large swaths of South Philadelphia, Southwest Philadelphia, and parts of Center City, in case you don't know that. And thanks so much for joining us, Councilman. And congratulations on getting another term in council.
Well, thanks for having me, and thanks for the congrats. And I look forward for another 4 years to serve my constituents in the 2nd Councilmanic District, as well as the city of Philadelphia.
Okay, now you didn't have any competition in your particular race, but I'm sure that you were around to see like the city council at large races, and particularly the mayor's race. What is that whole thing like for someone like you who doesn't have a contested race, but is surrounded on all sides by people who do?
Well, first, I actually did have a contested race. I had two opponents who filed incorrect signatures, and they were actually thrown off the ballot. And so I do want to acknowledge that part, because two people did try to challenge me, but we were successful in getting them off the ballot, which for the first time since I've been a council person, me having the opportunity to run without opposition. And so, but nevertheless, I was still very, very busy because I was working very hard to get my colleagues reelected. I've also supported all the incoming council members as well. So even though I didn't have an opponent, I still worked very hard to get the individuals who are new coming to council elected, as well as making sure that my current incumbent city council members were also reelected as well. So it was a lot of hard work, working in partnership with them, campaigning with them, making sure that we were getting out the vote for them. And so it was still a lot of hard work, even though I didn't have an opponent as well.
Now, you were one of the few council members who did not make an endorsement in the mayor's race.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about the thinking that went into that, and what made you decide that, you know, you were going to kind of keep your powder dry on that?
Well, you know, it was a very, very tough and difficult election for me, because everyone that was running I had a very, very close relationship with, from our current mayor to be, Sherelle Parker, down to me having a relationship with Helen Gim, Alan Dom, Jeff Brown, even Rebecca Reinhardt was the constituent. And because I had a close relationship with all of them, and within my particular ward, as a council person, we were very split in terms of who people wanted to support. And so I gave my ward an opportunity to keep the current top of the ticket open, the same way that the party did. And I just stayed out of it just to continue my good relationships with everyone and just let everyone just duke it out. And we'll see each other on May the 17th.
Okay. So you're also the chair of the Special Committee on Gun Violence. And there have been some issues with how some of the city's money for gun violence prevention has been distributed. Is that going to be the topic of a future hearing with the special committee? And, you know, were you disappointed to see that?
Well, you know, obviously, it was disappointing because, you know, in some areas we wanted to make sure people were thorough in terms of how we vetted organizations. And I do know it was a robust, at least for what I've seen, a robust process, but obviously some things fell through the cracks. But also we want to make sure that we aren't penalizing the boots on the ground organizations that were actually doing the right things in terms of their paperwork, and most importantly, doing the right things in terms of servicing the population most in need. And that's primarily young people who are carrying guns. And so in the future, I don't know if it'll be a hearing or actual roundtable discussion around this topic, because we want to do a deeper dive and find out, as we move forward, what are going to be the checks and balances to make sure we're thoroughly vetting the organizations and making sure they have their proper paperwork completed. But also on the administration side, we're doing a better job in making sure that, like, for instance, part of the process was, if you're going to support some of these boots on the ground organizations, they had to provide you invoices before you receive payment. And the sole purpose of this program was to support the organizations who didn't have the financial resources to actually get the job done that they were trying to do. And so we want to look at how we're administering the funds to support our organizations, but also making sure that at the end of the day, they're doing right by the funds that they're actually receiving. And also, I just want to make sure that We aren't creating obstacles and just penalizing the groups that are actually doing the work compared to some of the major larger institutions that can do great paperwork, but aren't necessarily inside the neighborhoods that actually need the support. And so it's a very critical issue that we have to address, but also I think we have to be delicate in making sure that we aren't just penalizing those organizations who are actually doing the work, because ultimately at the end of the day, we want to make sure that we're just not arresting our way out of this situation. How are we being preventative and supporting the actual organizations who are out there trying to help young people make positive decisions, trying to help young people not pick up guns in the first place, trying to help young people not carry guns in the first place, but most importantly, give them opportunities of hope. And so we will be examining that process as we move forward.
Okay. Now, is there anything that the special committee has coming up that you might want to let our listeners know about?
Yes, I have called for a hearing to examine the topic of straw purchasing here in the city of Philadelphia, as well as the prosecution of guns. And so we want to look at, there was a report that talked about how there are a significant amount of illegal guns flowing throughout the city of Philadelphia. Most of my constituents say, well, Councilman, you always talk about the prevention aspect, but do you ever ask the question, where are these guns coming from? And a significant amount of these guns are coming from straw purchasing, where individuals will go into stores and they will go to gun shows and sell these guns to our young people on the street. And so we want to examine, what are we doing as a city to crack down on those who are selling guns to our young people? And then also, how are we going about prosecuting those individuals who are carrying guns day in and day out? When they get arrested, what does that process look like? But most importantly, moving forward, are we holding those individuals accountable who are carrying guns in the first place?
Okay, now, based on that, based on what you just said there, the State House just passed a package of gun control legislation that's aimed at some of that. Are you optimistic? Because let's face it, every time the city has passed a piece of gun prevention legislation, the Commonwealth has turned around and said, under preemption, we're going to nullify this bill. Are you optimistic that now, since the House at least is taking this up, you might get some help in that regard?
Well, I am optimistic because we do have a majority in the State House for the first time in about 10 years, right? And so I'm looking forward to, actually it's longer than 10 years, because the last time there was a majority, I was actually serving in the State House with former chairperson of appropriations and state representative Dwight Evans. And I remember when they took the vote in which we lost the House majority and went to the minority. But nevertheless, I am optimistic under the leadership of our current speaker, Joanna McClinton, as well as our appropriations chair, Jordan Harris, and also our Philadelphia delegation chair, Morgan Cephas, with them controlling the majority and us having Josh Shapiro as our governor. When these bills go into the Senate, I'm hopeful, right? I want to be optimistically and pragmatically hopeful that they will come to some level of consensus, because the bills that was passed yesterday were bipartisan bills, background checks and red flag law checks bills, right? But one bill did fail, but hopefully those two bills will get passed in the Senate, but hopefully it will be the beginning of us taking more aggressive approaches in addressing the issue, because one of the key bills that I believe that needs to be passed on the state level is the reporting of lost and stolen guns. And that's a particular bill that we introduced, a resolution, actually a bill here in City Council. It was taken to court. It was shot down because of preemption law. But nevertheless, that's that bill that will allow us to go after individuals who are selling guns, because today you can sell 3 or 4 of your guns, and when the cops come to your house, all you have to do is say, oh, I lost my gun. Oh, somebody stole my gun. And nothing happens to you. And we know that if somebody steals your car and they hit someone and the police show up at your house, you better have an explanation as to how and when somebody stole your car. Other than that, you're going to be held accountable if you can't have some type of explanation as to why someone stole your car. And so if somebody can steal your car, you're held accountable. Surely it should be the same thing when you talk about deadly weapons being in the hands of young people.
Okay, and I have one last question. As you know, because you're on council, Darrell Clark has announced he's not seeking re-election. He's retiring as city council president. Now, you're one of the names that keeps coming up when it talks about the city council presidency. are you going to run for city council president? And, if so, what made you decide to do that?
Well, I would be honored if my colleagues would support me in becoming council president, succeeding council president Darrell Clark. I believe I have the vision, the passion, the commitment, and the integrity to lead this body with a new mayoral administration. I have a great relationship with our mayor, soon to be mayor-elect, Mayor Sherelle Parker. We both served in the state house together. And so I believe that we will be a dynamic duo and moving the city of Philadelphia forward, but also as an independent body. This is the people's body. And as a council president, I believe that we have to make sure that those who come in this body feel a part of our body. We need to make sure that we're being transparent on how we're doing the city's business, but also making sure that we're giving the wider public an opportunity to have a say-so on how we do business, but most importantly, how we move public policy forward. And so for me, if my colleagues will believe in me and support me in these efforts, I would definitely be succeeding Council President Darrell Clark as the next Council President here in City Council, and would be honored and privileged to have that opportunity to lead.
Okay. Well, thank you, Councilman. I'm going to give you now to my co-host, Larry McGlynn, and you're listening to Hall Monitor on WPPM 106.5.
All right, thank you, Denise. And Councilman, thanks so much for being with us. A couple weeks ago, you had chaired a hearing about the water rate increase or the possibility of such. Where are we with that right now?
Well, we did some hearings, and now we're reviewing the data from the hearings. We will be talking to the Finance Committee to look at why aren't we using the federal funds from the Biden infrastructure funding, and as it relates to the rate increase, but most importantly, why are we doing the rate increase as opposed to supplementing that rate increase with the funding from the federal government? And so we're waiting for a response from the Finance Department. And so it's a little back and forth. They have taken a position, but we want to get more clarity on why we're going that route as opposed to raising rates on constituents who, coming out of the pandemic, have seen challenges. So for me, any type of rate hike or increase in their water bill has a significant impact on the quality of their lives. And so we want to make sure that we're doing everything possible to minimize that financial impact on the families.
Do you feel the rate hike can be avoided?
I can't give a definitive answer at the moment, because obviously we still have to work in partnership with the administration. We still have to work in partnership with the finance director. And so it's a wait and see situation right now, but we will advocate as much as possible to provide some level of relief to our constituents who will be impacted by this rate increase.
Okay, so we are still in budget season, even though the budget hearings have
absolutely
stopped.
Yes.
The budget will be passed sooner than later, hopefully. But when the budget gets introduced in March, the mayor makes his address. There's about a month for everybody to get familiar with. Then we have the hearings. After the hearings, what are you working on in terms of the budget?
Yeah, so for myself and other colleagues, they all have their pet areas that they're going to be advocating for. For me, I have a Save Our Youth initiative that I'm advocating for, and it focuses on a variety of different areas. Additional funding for behavioral health counselors in the Philadelphia School District, additional funding for the Safe Paths, Safe Corridors program with the school district in a partnership with Town Watch to make sure our young people are safe going to and from schools, because obviously a lot of parents feel that their children aren't safe because we're seeing the shootings and the murders of our students who are attending public schools as well as charter schools. Also seeking additional funding for Department of Behavioral Health that specifically has a program that focuses around therapeutic support for young people who are dealing with trauma as relates to gun violence. And so going to be advocating for funding in that area. And also another program that's very near and dear to my heart called Future Track. I'm going to be advocating for additional funding to hire more young people to participate in the Future Track program. And Future Track is a program that hires young people regardless of their background, so they can have a record, right? But they would still engage in city-related work opportunities. And so rather that's helping us clean our alleyways, so we replace the light bulbs in the back of alleyways, helping us with various cleaning up of graffiti and other quality of life issues. It's a great entree for young people to have an opportunity to work for the city of Philadelphia. And so we're going to be advocating for additional funding to cover at least 100+ young people to participate. And also just making sure that overall we have a comprehensive support for youth employment opportunities for our young people. Every summer we have young people looking for jobs. Some are hired, some aren't hired. And so we're going to advocate for additional funding for as many young people to be hired as possible. I think the current budget is somewhere between 50 million plus. And so we just, part of my advocacy during this budget process is to make sure we're supporting as many young people as possible with opportunities. When we talk about the issue of gun violence, right, we're not going to rest our way out of this situation at all, right? And so we have intervention, we have prevention, intervention, and enforcement, right? And for me, this is part of prevention as well as intervention. And so giving young people opportunities prevents them from getting involved in a life of crime and gun violence. And also for those who may be involved in a life of crime and violence but want to get out of it, right? The intervention is also these opportunities that we're going to be providing for them as well. We know we have a lot of hard work to do around this particular issue in terms of making sure our young people are safe, our neighborhoods are safe, but I believe it's a step in the right direction with our budget. And actually, really, it's a drop in the bucket because our budget is close to 5 billion. We're talking about 50 million plus for our young people. So we're going to be advocating for the Save Our Youth budget initiative. We're going to be having in the future some events around it, advocating for it, and we'll keep you abreast of when those events are going to be.
And those are important issues, not just with gun violence, but also with poverty as well, which is good.
Yes, absolutely. When you look at areas of high poverty, you see high crime and gun violence, right? And this isn't just a coincidence. When you look at the lack of investments significantly from year after year after year after year in these key areas, right? You'll see gun violence. You'll see young people restless hanging out on Market Street at the fashion district because they don't have anything else to do. And I'm not condoning their behavior, but my Nana did teach me as a young man that idle mind is the devil's workshop. And so let's get them involved, at least just provide them those opportunities. But also as a city, we have to do a better job in making sure that their parents and family members know about these opportunities for our young people.
Going back to, I guess it was late January, early February, SEPTA released their bus revolution plan. As chair of the transportation committee, when you first saw that, what was your reaction? And then can you walk us through some of the things you've done since then?
Well, my first reaction was based upon my constituents calling me and say, hey, certain routes they cannot change because it would totally disrupt the quality of my transit life in terms of going to the doctor, going to get my checkup at my local medical center, making sure that if I'm a senior, how I'm going to and from home to downtown. And so I received significant calls regarding the SEPTA bus revolution plan, and we had hearings about it to give the leadership at SEPTA insight, issues and concerns of my council members, but also the wider public. That information was taken back and brought back to us. Some changes I was very, very pleased because a significant amount of routes that we advocated for remained the same. A lot of the bus names, which was another key issue we didn't want people to get confused about, remained the same. And also I was appreciative that they continue to engage the community about their changes and seeking feedback, because this is going to be a massive overhauling of our transit system, something we've never seen in this lifetime. And so we have to make sure we get it done right.
And so the plan has been kind of put on hold until next year, if I'm not mistaken, right? That's when it might come out. So right now you feel like you're satisfied with the where that is right now?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And obviously, you know, all plans are work in progress. That doesn't mean that some constituents from some other aspects from across the city of Philadelphia may come forward with issues and concerns, but as of right now, it's been pretty quiet. And it didn't start off quiet. It was that we received a significant amount of phone calls, emails, text messaging of people calling me saying, hey, what are we going to do about this? How are we going to address this issue? And to date, it's been pretty quiet.
Okay. Well, you're sort of right in the middle of all the things we're hearing about a lot, water rates and SEPTA and some other things. So Councilman, that's all I have. I'm going to send you back to Denise, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Councilman Johnson. We
Thank you,
really
Denise.
appreciate it. And we also really appreciate the fact that it took us a while to get this interview and we finally
Yes.
got it. And
Yes.
we hope we
Save
hope
the
we
best
can
for
have,
last.
yes, we hope we can have you back on soon.
Listen, you have my word. I'll come back on, and anyway, I can continue to be supportive and keep you updated about the things that I'm doing in the second councilmanic district. I will make sure to come on and keep you abreast. This is a great vehicle for me to get information out about the things that I'm doing, which also leads me to like one of your questions about why I'm seeking leadership in city council. You know, from data and polling shows that the direction of city council from the wider public isn't going in the right direction, right? And I want to be at the helm of making sure that we're changing that perception, that narrative. And part of it is making sure that the wider public know all the great things that my colleagues and I are working on, right? And that's that's a different type of PR strategy where you're working in partnership with the community, keeping them updated about the things that we are doing as a body. And I believe that all goes toward changing the perception, but also will increase voter participation because people will build their faith into what we're doing here in City Hall. I'll wrap up on that though, but thank you, Denise.
Well, thank you.
Y'all keep up the great work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman.